Hello and welcome to I won't call it concise and I'm not going to call it edited and I won't even call it professional, but my ADHD overview of F1 Fantasy, why it's fun and why you should probably check it out and play. So we have a new season started, and as you can see here at fantasy.formula1.com, we currently, as the time I'm recording this, 3 days, 3 hours and 50 minutes to lock in our teams for the race that starts this coming weekend. And I'm recording this on March the 3rd at 8:10 p.m. Eastern time. So we are getting ready to go. So typically you lock in your team prior to qualifying. Once qualifying starts, you are locked in for that week. So we have 3 days, 3 hours and 50 minutes as of right now to get our teams locked in. But that begs the question, if you're not familiar with Formula One, what is Formula One? I'm so glad you asked. So Formula One is millionaires racing for billionaires, and it's not something I should like based on principle, and yet I do. I really like the personalities, and I like it because it is a sport. They've got 23 races. I have to check, 23, 24. Anyway, it's a ridiculous number of races a year, and I like watching it because no matter where they are on the globe, it's a sport where there's one race to follow, right? That's it. So unlike football or any other sports where I gotta like go around and check all these other teams and all these other games and keep track of everybody in the entire league, I don't have to do that with F1 because every driver and every team is on the track for every race. You have one race to worry about, and that's it. I really like it because it's a constructor. So compared to like NASCAR, where everything's a very standardized car, and they a lot of times they're doing like oval tracks and things like that. Formula One is all over they are constructors. So literally this year they had new regulations that they had to build to. So it's the first generation of these cars. They're going to be built with these new regulations in mind, which is going to be now 50%, I think, ish, reliant on battery instead of just and sustainable fuels. So a lot of their power now is coming from battery management in addition to their regular engine. So it's going to be interesting because these folks have had a couple years to adapt to and design their cars, but nobody knows who got it right yet. And this week in Australia, they've done some testing weeks so far, but this week in Australia, the first race is when we're going to find out, I think, for first glimpse of who actually the winners and losers are. And where last year was the last year of the old generation of cars, the field was so tight. There would be like hundreds of thousands or tens of hundreds of seconds between cars, between numbers. You could have like car number 1 and car number 20 on the track could be separated by like hundreds of a second, right? But now we might see some literal gaps because we don't know who got it right or wrong yet. And they haven't started stealing shamelessly from each other's designs yet. So it's wild. So even though the cars look very similar, they're not the same, and they're built by each team has its own constructor that they're working with. And then, we can get more technical. Some of the power units that like the engine and battery combinations are built for like Mercedes that are shared among different teams. Like Mercedes will like outsource and sell them those if they don't have one. But that's a whole nother thing I don't need to get into, and I'll spare you those details unless you really want them. And then I could talk about them. But anyway, same thing with the fuel source. Each type of engine manufacturer uses the power units. Like Mercedes gets their fuel from Petronas. They're not even using the same fuel, but the fuel still has to meet regulations and it has to pass like an inspection to be used. And some teams already have not hit that deadline. So they might have to use like a generic fuel this coming race as opposed to one that's like specifically made for their engine. And that might lead to some performance loss. We don't know what's going to happen. It's pan-delirium. But anyway, so Formula One is international. It's very like there are some US races. Like we got Miami, we got Vegas, and we have Texas, which is 3 great races that are happening right now in the US. But a lot of it is like Eurocentric, or like they do a lot in like South America and Asia, and like they're all over the globe. And so there's like a kind of an international appeal to that I really dig. And it's kind of cool to see like the different races and different tracks. And sometimes the different tracks are the main character of the story. Like the drivers themselves are great, but some of these tracks are very, very storied. And like a race at Monaco is very, 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 very different than a race in Las Vegas, which is a street circuit, which is a very, very different race to, going to Imola and seeing one in Italy at the Temple of Speed. Like these tracks have very different personalities that make them fun to watch. So each race kind of plays out differently. And that's before you get into like what the weather's doing and all these other variables that can happen. So in a nutshell, F1 is racing It's, like I said, very Eurocentric, but it's like, it's really super cool to watch. And it's considered like the pinnacle of sport by, of racing and, in some circles, but I just like it because I like the idea that is somewhat about driving skill and somewhat about an engineering challenge. And so that appeals to that nerd aspect of me as well. So I really, really, really dig it for those reasons. And this is going to be the Wild West this weekend. Nobody knows what's going to happen, and it's super exciting. So Nate, where did you might have heard of F1? I heard of F1 originally through Gary and Donna and Devin. For those who don't know, that is like my mother-in-law and her husband Gary, and their son. So like Devin is super cool, and they made the crucial mistake of showing me an F1 race and explaining why it was cool a few years ago. And I don't think they expected me to latch onto it like I have, and they probably wish they could take it back, but it's too late. The genie's out of the bottle, and now I'm hooked. But you could also hear from it from like something like Drive to Survive, which is not a documentary. It is a reality show that is heavily edited and not with the behind the scenes footage and things like that. So if you like a real world kind of a take on things, like this is George Russell, one of the British drivers, probably like the British driver at Mercedes right now. What's going on with George? Okay, fantastic. So that's George. He's making skincare products that have an unfortunate odor to them. And he goes on to talk about some of the drama that's coming with Red Bull, and and that's what Drive to Survive likes to do. My favorite driver, Max Verstappen, drives for Red Bull, and the appeal of Drive to Survive is to, and for a lot of people, or the way that it is shot is to make Red Bull and Max Verstappen specifically cast as the villain of F1, which kind of, whatever, he could take it. He's Dutch. He doesn't really care. So that gets us into British bias, which of course there is none. In F1, it's completely unbiased. They don't treat it like they've invented motor racing just because the first F1 race happened at Silverstone. And they absolutely give fair and balanced takes and fair and balanced coverage to every single driver. There are no favorites. And so in any of the premier English, at least, F1 channels, you will not find any sort of British bias whatsoever. The mere insinuation of that is quite honestly ludicrous and could be considered treason, and the king might have you executed. So don't do that. And anyway, no British bias at all in F1. So what's going on with the regulations 2026? I've talked about that. This is going to be the Wild West in terms of an engineering challenge. They have gotten rid of they're completely changing their aerodynamic package. They've changed the way that like drivers can control the cars inside the car with their aerodynamic packages in terms of like how the controlling their wings and how much they flex in straights and things like that. They made the cars a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller. They're using, like I said, like more of a, the power unit's more going to be much more reliant upon the battery and instead of just the engine and, the gas and fueled engine as well. So like, it's going to be wild to see like how they're going to be able to adapt to this and which drivers get it right. Because there's a skill set in getting this right now too. Like apparently the start procedure is such that when you're on the starting line, you have to rev the engine to get to a certain RPM to start charging the battery immediately so that the battery is ready to go. And so people are even like, even the starting procedure could be wild this weekend to see who gets it right and who doesn't, like right off the line. So it could be a real, crazy bag of cats going into turn one of race one this week to see like what happens and if it causes congestion and if it causes some wrecks just getting out of the first turn in Australia this weekend. So anyway, we don't need to get into like the whole details of that because I could say that's a whole other video, but new regulations, Wild West, nobody knows who got it right. Nobody knows who got it wrong yet. And it's going to be crazy. There are some technical regulations. If you want to see, there's like videos on the F1 and I'll link some videos in this video to you guys can actually learn from actual professionals and know what they're talking about. If you're interested, there's an 8 minute and 20 second video, everything you need to know about Formula One 2026 regulations. That's done by the official Formula One channel. I'll link it in there. It's cool. It goes into like, okay. So like I said, if you want to have a British man with a ASMR voice that could read you a bedtime story and put you to sleep with a nice cup of cozy tea, talk to you and convince you that, about why the 2026 regulations are cool, this video is definitely one to watch. It goes into it. Do you need to know about this to play fantasy? No, absolutely not. But it just kind of goes into the regulations as to why I think it's cool and why the sport I think is going to be really, really fun and why right now is the best time to get into F1 fantasy. and watching the sport in general. So that brings us to our drivers. And I think this is great. This is where I get a lot of the appeal for F1 because, and I was asked to kind of like put together a primer on who the drivers were so people can kind of know who they are. And it is my pleasure and privilege to give you my extremely unbiased and thorough understanding of who each of these drivers are and why they matter and what makes them cool or not so cool in some cases. So we are going to start, and each one of them is grouped by team. So we'll just go down the line here. So we have Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly is tragically French. He's a very, very nice guy. He used to be a Red Bull driver that drove with Max Verstappen. Didn't work out for him there. Went to Alpine. He's doing great. He's doing great at Alpine. The only time he doesn't do great is when I put him in my F1 fantasy team. And then whenever I do that, he will wreck and cost me a lot of points and budget. But he's a cool driver. I like to see him do well. Franco Colapinto. This is his second year. He's Argentinian. And he has a huge, huge following in South America as a result. Very skilled driver, still kind of, rookie kind of, ish. So we're kind of seeing what's going on with him with his sophomore slump coming out and seeing if he's going to, rise to that challenge and be consistent this year. But they're obviously a kind of a skilled prodigy. And, we're looking to see what he's going to do this year on the track. So that's our Alpine team. Then we move over to Aston Martin, which is just a tale of tragedy and woe. I'm going to skip Fernando for a minute. We're going to go to Lance Stroll. Lance's daddy owns the team. Lance has a seat, and I mean literally owns Aston Martin's F1 team. So he's a Canadian billionaire. Lance keeps his seat because dad owns the team. That's it, point blank. All right. So sometimes he has flashes of brilliance. He's a good wet weather driver, and he can like really surprise you and like actually turn up when he's not completely bored and actually put in a good day's work and like really have a nice drive. And then other times he's literally ran off the track into the gravel on the formation lap. Like the race hasn't even started yet. It's when you go around the track just to kind of like get the tires warmed up, he's beached the car and had to like DNF and like did not finish in the gravel. So we call it like in F1 fantasy, a lot of times they call it the stroller coaster. You don't want to ride the stroller coaster because the ups might be high, but the downs are down, right? The other thing that's going on with them this year is that Aston Martin, they stole the engineer from Red Bull, Adrian Newey, who had designed all of these cool cars from Red Bull going back over a decade that had them in championship contention and winning championships. Well, Aston Martin stole him last year. And so he's been working in secret on this cool new car for Aston Martin that's going to come out. And Lance's dad has been throwing all kinds of money into new wind tunnels and designing this car. Well, apparently it sucks. I mean, it sucks to the point that this week in Australia, they are already saying in the news, they may just do the formation lap and do basically drive just enough laps to get credit for showing up and then put both cars away and quit the race because they haven't figured out the engines yet. They're not even sure if it's going to make it a full race. Like the car literally can't maybe make it a full race distance, and they don't have enough spare parts in case something goes wrong. These guys are clearly not ready, which is extremely sad for this guy, Fernando Alonso. Fernando has been driving longer than I think Franco Colapinto and like some of these rookies have been alive. Fernando Alonso is like in his mid to late 40s at this point. It's just a question of when he's going to retire, not if. He actually owns some stake in Aston Martin. I think once he's done, he'll probably go into the leadership role there and kind of probably be an ambassador and drink champagne and travel internationally and smile because he's gorgeous, and people love him. He's beloved. He's raced against some of the all-time greats in the sport for several generations, and he's been a world champion a couple of times as well. Great guy, and I hate to see him go out this way. But it doesn't look good for him this year, but we're pulling for him. But man, right now it looks really rough. So that brings us down to Audi. We've got another guy in his second year, Gabriele Bortoleto, another really, really talented guy who did a good showing last year. But he's kind of overshadowed by Nico Hülkenberg. Nico, very German and very skilled driver, but he's like king of the B tiers, right? Like if there was he's never been like a top tier driver, but he's just been that solid workhorse performer that has just gone out there and done the job and can perform. Like he, up until last year, had the longest streak in F1 history of being in F1 for a number of races without actually ever getting on the podium. He just broke that streak last year for his first time on the podium, but he had been a point scorer, and he's an excellent driver. But he's really, really talented. But we'll have to see what they can do this year. Audi, this is technically kind of their first year as Audi. They used to be Kick Sauber last year, and now they're Audi. So there's been some personnel changes. There's been a brand change. We don't know how this is going to translate into this year to see like, what's that mean for the car development? How competitive are they? We don't know. So you got kind of a wonder kid here, and you got the old workhorse here, where I'd love for them to see them do well. We just don't know. Speaking of new, Cadillac, this is their first year on the grid. Like, this is a brand new team. So we're going from, literally going from 10 teams to 11. So for 20 drivers to 22 drivers, we don't even know how that's going to impact things. Like, they just lowered the pit speed limit when you're coming into the pits. They had to lower the speed for Australia. They just did this week. They just did the math, and because they're calculating like, oh yeah, we got 2 more cars out there. So we have an entire other garage that's been added to the pit lane. And we need to account for that by having people slow down to account for like the traffic that's coming through. So even that's could be a real, crapshoot, seeing on who gets it right or who ends up going over the speed limit when they're coming into the pit. Anyway, Cadillac's first year, they got 2 veterans though. Sergio Perez, again, used to be Max's teammate at Red Bull, was let go by Red Bull the previous year. So he sat out last year, but they're bringing him back. Mexican driver, extremely beloved personality, and just a solid workhorse, kind of like Nico, but he's had flashes of brilliance. He's obviously, won some races. He's been on the podium several times. He's a good guy. Valtteri Bottas is Finnish and is, he's kind of like the crazy redneck of the group. Like, I mean that like jean shorts and mullet and hanging out, drinking a Pabst Blue Ribbon. Like, he's this country as they get. And like, he's kind of a character, but he used to drive with a Mercedes with like Lewis Hamilton, and Mercedes let him go. And he was like the reserve driver for a while. So this is his chance after a full year of getting back on the grid. And it's going to be interesting this week, because on this first race, he has to serve a 5-place grid penalty for a penalty he picked up on his last time out as a driver. And I think it's been well over a year. Maybe it's been 2 seasons or a year. I can't even remember. So they're carrying it forward. So he'll start wherever he qualifies this week. He's going to start 5 positions back in the actual race, which, it sucks, but it is what it is. But everybody, again, beloved personality, these two together, we really hope Cadillac has put together a good package and will get off the ground, and kind of not have to have the growing pains that a lot of new teams are. But it's going to be wild to see the dynamic change with what a new team on the grid looks like for the first time in a long time. And to see these two, kind of beloved veterans come back onto the grid. Then we get to Ferrari. Ferrari is Ferrari. They're definitely one of my favorite teams, and they're Lindsay's favorite team. But they're tragic in that they're kind of like Macbeth. Like, it's kind of like Shakespearean. Like, no matter how much you root for them, they're just going to break their heart and probably end up sad. So we'll start with Lewis Hamilton. 7-time world champion, and has not, last year was his worst season ever. That last year was his first year with Ferrari, and after leaving Mercedes. And it's kind of like when Ken Griffey, if you know baseball, like it's kind of like when Ken Griffey left the Mariners and went to the Reds to kind of finish out his career. I don't know, like it's kind of like his best rate is clearly behind him, but Ferrari didn't do him any favors last year. And he was going from a team where it's like he had spent his entire career and had been kind of pampered and catered and had been really built around him, from the car all the way down to like all the support staff and everybody on the team, to now going to Ferrari, where Ferrari has an ego problem where it's like no driver is ever bigger than Ferrari, and our car could never be bad because we're Ferrari, and we've been making the best cars in the world for longer than anybody here has been alive, and how dare you say that there's anything wrong with our car. But sometimes they do some stupid stuff, and sometimes it really is the car. So we don't know what's going to happen this year with them. So Sir Lewis Hamilton, beloved British fashion icon, who I think is apparently dating Kim Kardashian at this point. That's a new thing. We'll see how he does this year. He seems like he's more confident and capable in the car this year, and he likes it a lot more, but we'll see what happens. That brings us to Charles Leclerc. Charles is from Monaco. He's, an adorable little boy who we just want to see do well. Lindsay adores him, and we just want to see Charles do the best that he can, and get out there and actually win some races and hopefully win a championship someday, because this man deserves it. He's, beloved by the Italians. He's, obviously beloved in his home city of Monaco. He actually won the race at Monaco. Was it 2 years ago, I think now? Where he actually, well, yeah, it was 2 years ago. He won the race on his home soil at Monaco. Like literally the track was set up on the street circuit where you could see the bus stop where they used to catch to go to school. The race circuit went by that. So like that was a huge deal for him to do that. Charles is beloved. He's great. Then we get down to Haas. Haas is kind of like almost like they're an American owned team, obviously in Haas, and you might know them from like NASCAR and some of their other endeavors, but I think they use a lot of the Ferrari, in terms of their engines and structure and things like that. But they build their own car, but I think they source everything from Ferrari in terms of like the power unit. But they got Esteban Ocon. He's fine. He's got a little bit of an edge. He's got a little bit of an attitude. I mean, you look at that face, that's Esteban. If you see this facial expression, like this is Esteban Ocon in a nutshell. A very good driver, hit or miss, can have flashes of brilliance and some talent, but he can kind of be a smug little jerk sometimes too. And you just never know which Esteban Ocon you're going to get. But amazing job in the wet weather. Good friends like Pierre Gasly and some of the other guys on the track. And he's a good driver. Like he's a solid driver. So we'll have to see. I don't know. Again, tragically French. Oliver Behrman, look at this boy. Look at this absolute baby boy. Good driver, British, you know what? But I won't hold that against him because he's such a little lad and he goes out there and he does his best. He's also in his second year. His first showing in F1 was actually filling in for Ferrari the year before. He came in just as their junior driver. Like there was a driver that was out and he came in and filled in and did an amazing job in that car. And so that earned him a spot on the grid last year as a rookie. And he had the most overtakes last year as a result. Like he was a really, really good driver, really, really good person. He's just happy to be here. It's kind of like he's driving with his heroes that he grew up watching. And you could tell this little man is just thrilled to be part of the show. He's just got the biggest grin and he just wants to come out and do his best every year or every race. And it's absolutely adorable and endearing. So we root for Ollie and Behrman in this house. Lando Norris, you notice he's got the number one because he won the championship last year by 2 points. 2 points. McLaren, generally not a fan. Their CEO / mouthpiece is a guy named Zach Brown. I do not like Zach Brown. So I will not go into why I don't like Zach Brown, but he's kind of a loudmouth. He's kind of like one of those bosses that like when something good happens, he's out there doing all the interviews and taking the limelight. But when it doesn't go to plan, he makes this Andrea Stella guy, who's the actual like team principal, he makes Andrea Stella have to go out there and talk to the cameras. So like he's the boss that takes credit for all your good ideas and then throws you under the bus when things go wrong. He's a blowhard, and I do not care for him. And he did this thing last year where it's like, oh, we have 2 number 1 drivers. We have papaya rules. They're allowed to race each other, but only so hard and only so long as it looks like Lando's going to win, because he's British, and the Queen and the King mandate that he must be the favorite. So poor Oscar here, who's a beloved Australian, he's going to be in a home race this weekend. He's like, I love you both equally, but some of you are more equal than others. That's the real trick with McLaren. So a lot of times it's like, oh, we'll try to slow down and don't race each other. But usually it works out to where it's going to be in Lando's favor. And that really infuriated a lot of people last year. But these guys were doing amazing back and forth for most of the season and almost in winning. And then Oscar just kind of fell off a cliff. I think he just got demoralized because he could see the team was clearly favoring Lando, and he just kind of let it get in his head. That's my theory, at least. And then Max, who was the 4-time champion and almost won. He only lost by 2 points last year to Lando. And because these guys were infighting, but Max was like sitting there, and we'll get into Max later, but he was fighting most of it, like the first, third of the season with like the 4th best car on the grid and was still managing to hang with these guys. So if these guys would have had their stuff together and their infighting would have got each other, or if like one of these would have actually been the favored driver, they probably would have won by a mile. But Lando won by 2 points, but 2 points is 2 points, and he is technically the champion for 2025. So this is his first year going out with the number 1 on there. The first year defending his title. The absolute zero British bias. They love him, and he can do no wrong. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So we will see how he does, how successful he is coming out this year to defend his title. Do I like him? He's fine. He's okay, but he does some stuff that really like irritates me. Like he'll drop some things. Like people were complaining, like Lewis and Max and Fernando. Remember this guy? We have a 4-time world champion, we have a 7-time world champion, and we have like a 2-time world champion. All saying that the new car regulations are not great for racing, and they don't really like the way the direction that this is going, and they're kind of worried that it might not be great for the sport long term. And they were voicing their concerns, shared by a lot of the other drivers, but they were just voicing their concerns. Well, Lando came out and, oh, I completely disagree, and it's going to be great, and this racing's going to be fantastic, and this and whatever, which caused controversy. And you see a lot of British headlines going like, Norris pushes back on Max Verstappen, how, the reigning champion destroys Max's take on why these cars are bad. And then like a week later, I think it might not even be a week later, somebody was asking about it. He's like, yeah, I just did that as a meme. I completely agree with Max and everybody else. I just wanted to be controversial and say something different to see if people would run with it. So, okay, so you're just being a troll. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. He's a good driver. He can be brilliant. He could be somebody that's like, he's somebody I wish I could root for, but then he does stuff that just irritates the hell out of me, and I can't. So I want to see whatever chip he's got on his shoulder this year just get knocked clean off. That would be amazing for me. And I don't like McLaren, but I do like Oscar. He's just another like nice guy, wants to get his head down, wants to do the work. He has taken his lumps. He has been the team player. He has been the guy who had to literally, push his ego down and been asked to sacrifice over and over and over and over again to prop up his teammate. And he's done it usually without complaint, even when he was getting screwed. So like, I'd love to see him, especially on home soil in Australia this year. I'd love to see him do well. Then we get to the Mercedes. Look at this talented Mr. Ripley psychopath. This is George, Mr. I make, semen scented skin cream products. George is a limelight. He's a very good driver, very British. Everybody loves him. He is like the most consistent performer last year. He would always be like, oh, there'd be all these guys fighting for the podium to get like first and second, and there'd be George in third or fourth, like constantly, right? He's kind of just going quietly about his business, scoring points and keeping Mercedes in there. Very good driver. Mercedes is rumored to have figured out these new regulations and better than anybody else. And that even in preseason testing, they're kind of like sandbagging a little bit and like not trying to show their true potential. So we're very, very interested to see if this is a smoke show or if like Mercedes really got it right and it's just going to blow everybody out of the water. But yeah, George, very, very good driver. He can be interesting, like controversial. Up to his credit, he's kind of like a head of the drivers union. So he will actually do some good for the sport, like pushing back on like the some of the driver stuff and actually caring and doing something like that. But then he'll offset that, but just being smug and just kind of like, I don't know, trying to start drama. So I do like George. I do respect George. He's tragically British. Then we get to Kimi Antonelli. Again, look at this Italian baby. Look at this little boy they let out there. I think he has blocks tied to his feet when he drives. How is this even legal? I don't know. But this man, this little boy man, he's like, I don't know. He's like Pinocchio, and he just wants everybody else to make him a real boy. Like, that's all he is. He's just a sweet little lad who goes out there and does his best with his little Italian accent. The Italians obviously love him. A lot of the rookies love Max, and like, so you'll see a lot of them just like attached to the hip at him. Like he's the mother goose of these little rookies, and they all just like, kind of like follow around him in a little gaggle. They've actually had some good racing battles last year, and he would get out of the car and like go get up to Max and be like, "Are you proud of me? Did I do good?" Yeah, like it was just like the sweetest boy. So we like Kimi. He's a good driver. Last year was his first year on the track as well. So he's a sophomore driver as well. Looking forward to see what he can do. After now he's got some year. He's had some real flashes of brilliance last year too. So we root for Kimi in this house. Liam Lawson, he's fine. He's fine. He's not, I don't know that he's interesting enough for me not to like him. But he's fine. He's flavor. He's like, yeah. He's just like I don't know. He's like a stick of gum. And not even like not even the kind of crackles. He's like a gum. Just, yes, it's just fine, right? It's like a thing of juicy fruit. It's fine. He's fine. Arvin Lindblad, our rookie on this year. He drove for the Red Bull team. He's also very British. I haven't known him long enough to hold that against him yet. He was an F2, like the series that was a step down. And so he's coming in this year as the first actual rookie on the team. He was part of the Red Bull development team, and Racing Bulls is kind of like, if you notice the Bull theme, they're kind of like the junior team to getting into Red Bull. I don't really know much about him. He seems like a competent kid. Hope he does well. Then we get to Red Bull. I would say it's my favorite team, but it's really not, because I'm not really a team guy. I'm more of a driver guy. As Isaac Hadjar, again, was a rookie last year. He was driving for Racing Bulls, and then he ended up having the seat open up and was able to jump in, midway, I think, ish through the season, and actually he finished out the season with Racing Bulls. He finished out the race with Racing Bulls. So we're all trying to see, is he going to be able to survive being Max Verstappen's second driver? And the problem with Max is the Dutch Lion, I think he's the best driver on the grid in terms of skill. He can do things in a car that nobody else is able to actually capable of doing. We love Max in this house. He's very, very Dutch and very, very blunt, and he just wants to drive. And I love him because when he's done racing, you know what he does? He goes home and he sim races. He gets on his computer and actually does sim racing. So he just wants to win, and he just wants the cars to be fun, and he just wants to get out there and drive. I adore Max. But Max is kind of if you ever try to play a game or do something where your mouse sensitivity's turned all the way up and you can barely control it. That's how the car is tuned. And a lot of times Max can get the most out of a car like that. Whatever the car is, he can get the most out of it. And then his teammates try to do what he does and they can't. And eventually they end up changing drivers. It's not really fair, but that's kind of the curse of the second Red Bull seat. I really hope Isaac can break that streak and can hold his own this year. Again, nice kid, enthusiastic. We love Isaac in this house, and we want him to do really well, but he's living in the shadow of this man, and I wish him all the luck. Then we get down to Williams, our last two drivers. Carlos Sainz, Spanish heartthrob. Look at the hair. My God. What an absolute gorgeous person. He's amazing. He used to be the driver with Charles at Ferrari, and then when Lewis wanted to leave Mercedes, they showed Carlos the door, and Williams picked him up last year. And last year was the first time that happened. Well, funny enough, Carlos actually got on the podium last year in a Williams. Well, Ferrari, Lewis couldn't do anything in a Ferrari. So that was kind of his vindication last year. So we want Carlos to do well. Even though we like Ferrari as a team, we want Carlos to do well to kind of stick at the Ferrari because of the ungraceful way that they showed him the door. His dad is pretty cool too. His dad is a huge racer and does enduro racing and the desert racing and stuff like that too. So he comes from it honestly, but really cool guy, very charismatic. They call him the smooth operator. Just a really cool guy, and we like Carlos in this house. And then finally Alexander Albon, again, another former teammate of Max's who went to Williams, and is just a really good, nice, competent, solid guy who goes out there and does well. Sometimes, depending on how good the Williams car is, that's the only two really thing that's holding these guys back. They're probably gonna they're kind of best of the rest. You have your Red Bull, you have your McLaren, you have your Ferrari that are usually going to be your front runners, right? And then these are the teams that are kind of up front, and Mercedes. And then after those top four, then you usually get kind of Williams, or will be in the mix there somewhere. So they're kind of in the best of the rest category a lot of the times. We'll see if that holds true this year, because we have no idea who did what with the cars. But they're both good drivers, both good people, and we just like the rooting for both of them. So that is a very broad, unbiased, and completely accurate overview of all 22 drivers on the grid this year and what makes them cool, or not so cool. So what next? So you're like, oh, how do I even play F1 Fantasy? Because wasn't that the whole point of this stupid video, Jason? Yeah, it was. So F1 Fantasy, you go into this thing, you pick your team, and then you have $100 million budget, and when you put your team together, and you can mix and match, you have any five drivers and any two constructors. So you could try to be like, oh, I'll get Ferrari and I'll get Red Bull. Well, congratulations, you've already used more than your cap, more than half your money doing that. So now when you go back to drivers, if you want Max, you may not even be able to afford a full team at this point. So if you're trying to just put together people to afford, it's okay, can I even put together a team? Well, see, I ran out of money. You can't do that, right? So you might be able to do Charles and maybe come down here and do another. Can I get fit anybody else in there? Let's see. Can I get everybody in there? I think I got everybody. I don't think even think I can make that work. Maybe we get rid of Red Bull. Anyway, the point is, you pick 5 that hits the budget, right? And then every week they either go up or they don't. Typically what you do is you come in here, you pick a constructor that you like. Let's say if I wanted to get, Ferrari, and I wanted to pick somebody like, I don't know, Alpine. And then I go over here and I get, so these are considered like an A tier and a B tier. And you come in here and you're like, all right, let's get George Russell. Cause he looks like maybe Mercedes figured it out. And I go down here and I'm like, all right, who's some other good cheap drivers? I'm like, all right, maybe I'll get Bottas and Colapinto and Behrman and Ocon, right? I got 10 million left, so maybe I'm leaving too much on the table there, but that's the point, right? You lock it in and you go. If you want guides on how and that's it. You pick your 5 team, you win, you lose. Your budget may go up or down depending on how they do. And you get points every week, and then you go forward and you go to the next week, and you might make adjustments to your team. You get a couple free transfers every week between races that you can make. That's it. It's really not more any complicated than that. It can be more complicated than that. It can be as complicated as you'd like it to be, but that's pretty much it. Now, if you're wondering like, oh my gosh, how do I learn more about this? Well, you're in luck, because that's the regulations video. You can get like people like Adam, the content creators, who's like one of the nicest guys ever. And like, I can link to his channel down here, and he's got this like how to play beginners guide for 2026. It's like 6 minutes long, a lot shorter than what I've done. And you've got you in here who does, again, how to play F1 fantasy in 2026. Well, 13 minutes long, you know what I mean? But still a nice guy, and he'll do that. Then you've got Rob. I don't like Rob's mustache. I think this was a mistake. This was not here last year, and this is freaking me out. I do not like this regulation change for 2026. But again, we're super nice guy, very, very knowledgeable, and he's got this beginner guide, and they all 3 will put together every week or every race. They'll have like tons of videos out about like team compositions and what they're thinking and examples of their teams that they want to put together. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole and then we got Rain. Rain wins hands down in the content creation facial hair department. He I think he's German. This guy, this mustache, that lets you know this man means business. And again, very cool dude. And he doesn't have a beginner guide, but he's kind of like, he's talking about the changes here in this video about all of the changes to F1 Fantasy this year. And he goes into like some of the team selection stuff like that. So basically, if you don't know about fantasy, find some content creators. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll watch all 4 of these guys, and I'll figure out what are they doing similar. And then I just kind of like shotgun and go in the middle and figure and then put my own spin on things like that. That's how I pick my teams. But if you want to find out how to play the game, I'll put some links to this stuff in the link below. But I have rambled long enough. This has been 38 minutes, which is, oh my gosh, that shouldn't have been taking that long. But when you get me rambling about F1 and F1 Fantasy, that's what happens. So if there's interest, I'll put together like a friends and family league. I'm in one already with some some folks that are like, it's kind of a tight knit group, but I'm thinking about opening this up to anybody who wants to teach them. And if you're interested in F1, if you want to watch the races, why do I love it? Because it makes me, the bottom line is the short version, which maybe I should have just led with this, and then just like that could have been a 2-minute video. F1 Fantasy makes you care about every spot on the grid, not just who wins the race or not just who ends up on the podium. I'm just as invested on if Alex Albon finishes the race, or if Kimi Antonelli, my Italian boy, does well and actually, gets some points that week, and doesn't DNF. I'm just as vested as if Max and Charles and George or whatever are like fighting for the win. So it makes you care about every team. It makes you care about every driver that's on your team, and it gives you a reason to watch the races every week. And it's super fun. Lindsay loves it. I love it. Some members of our family and our friends love it. So I highly encourage you to give it a try. If anything I've said is at all interesting to you, and listening to me ramble about this for nearly 40 minutes, which I'll shut up now, I would highly recommend giving it a try. There's no wrong way to play unless you get Lando Norris, because Lando Norris